Hey everyone, and welcome back to Psycast. I'm Cypher.
And I'm Castia. We are the NPCs.
Good to be back. So, what did you get up to this weekend? Any gaming? Movie marathons?
Oh man, weekend. Well, I tried to rank up in Overwatch 2, keyword tried. Let's just say my SR is weeping softly, and I finally started watching that new sci-fi series everyone's talking about on streaming. You... still digging through the retro vaults?
Something like that. Actually revisited an old favorite, put a new fan translation patch on a classic strategy RPG. You know, gotta keep the old skills sharp. Plus, caught up on some of Psyguy's latest streams. He's been doing some fun hypothetical battles lately.
Nice. Yeah, Psyguy, our producer and researcher extraordinaire, keeping us supplied with all this great info. And yeah, those streams are fun. Hey, speaking of Psyguy's channel, if you're listening and haven't subscribed yet, you totally should.
Absolutely. You get this podcast weekly, talking about games, sometimes these wild hypothetical fights, plus Psyguy's live streams, all in one place on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button.
Do it. Do it now. Anyway, sorry if there's any weird audio hiccups today, folks. Sometimes the tech gremlins visit.
We do our best. Okay, so today we're looking at some fascinating material Psyguy pulled together on a really unique game from the late 90s.
Yeah, this one's a bit of a wild card. Ehrgeiz. God bless the ring. Remember this one? PlayStation era, kind of a fighter, kind of something else.
Exactly. It popped up when arcades were still, a significant thing, but the PlayStation was really hitting its stride.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just another fighter clone.
No way. It felt really ambitious right out of the gate. Like they were trying to smash together a 3D fighting game with, well, basically a whole action RPG hidden inside it.
That core idea, fighting in these big open 3D arenas where you could run anywhere, plus this massive single-player RPG mode was pretty out there for the time.
Totally. And the backstory is interesting, too. It wasn't just one team. You had Dream Factory, who, made the Tobal games, which already played with 3D movement.
Right. They had some pedigree in that space.
Partnering with Square. The Final Fantasy people. That collaboration itself kind of signals this wasn't going to be your standard fighting game.
Definitely raises an eyebrow.
Yeah.
And you can see the strategy, can't you? Especially thinking globally.
Oh, yeah. Final Fantasy VII had just become this massive global phenomenon a little while before Ehrgeiz hit.
A planetary-sized hit, basically.
Pretty much. So Square, being smart, leverages that. They drop Cloud, Tifa, Sephiroth, and others right into this fighting game. Talk about a killer marketing hook.
Huge. So that's what we're going to unpack. What was Ergheiz actually trying to achieve? How did the fighting feel? What was the deal with this huge RPG mode? And, why do some people still talk about it as this kind of cult classic or underappreciated gem?
Let's dig in. So development-wise, Dream Factory was the main engine here. They were already working with 3D fighting tech, stuff focused on more freedom of movement, clearly building off what they learned with Tobal 1 and 2.
And it started in arcades, right? On Namco hardware.
Yeah, Namco's System 12 board, which was essentially PlayStation tech crammed into an arcade cabinet. That made the eventual PlayStation port quite a bit smoother than some other arcade-to-console transitions back then.
That makes sense. Probably why the PS1 version felt so robust, but the publishing sounds like it was all over the place depending on where you live.
Oh, it was a tangled web. You had Namco doing the arcade, then Squaresoft handling the PlayStation release in Japan, which was obviously key. But then Sony Computer Entertainment actually published it for Square internationally. And then you had specific arms like Aniplex and Square EA handling North America and Europe. It really shows you how fragmented game distribution used to be before digital just, steamrolled everything.
Yeah, simpler times now in some ways, huh? Okay, so behind the scenes, some big names involved. Zachi Ishii directed and designed it. His background is kind of nuts. Virtua Fighter at Sega, then Tekken 1 and 2 at Namco.
That's a serious fighting game pedigree right there. This is someone who helped define the 3D fighting genre in its early days. And you can totally see how his work at Dream Factory, especially on Tobal, with its grappling and movement, led into Ergheiz. It feels like he was still exploring, what else can we do with this 3D space? Pushing beyond just sidestepping.
More open, less constrained than Tekken or VF at the time.
Exactly. And that shows up directly in how Ergheiz plays. Not your typical back and forth on a 2D plane. The arenas were big, multi-level sometimes, and you could just run, sprint around, forwards, backwards, sideways. The camera tried its best to keep up, swinging around dynamically.
That freedom of movement was definitely its calling card. And the arenas weren't just flat squares, were they?
No. Some had platforms, different heights you could jump to. There was even stuff lying around, like crates you could pick up and chuck at your opponent. Using the environment was actually part of the strategy, knocking people off ledges, that kind of thing.
Tactical crate throwing. The pinnacle of combat.
Hey, don't knock it till you've tried it. But yeah, the actual combat controls were a bit different too. Less about memorizing long combos, maybe. More about timing and where you were standing.
Seemed like it. You had guard, high attack, low attack, and a special attack button. 4 main actions.
Right. The special was often tied to a meter, unique for each character, projectiles, power moves, that sort of thing. And there were advanced bits like quick stand recovery, ways to interrupt attacks, counters, wall-specific moves. The blocking was interesting too, kind of like Tekken's default block, just stand still, block high and low.
So simplifying the button inputs, but adding complexity through movement in the environment.
That seems like the idea. Though, looking back at the material, it wasn't universally loved for its depth. Compared to the big dogs like Tekken 3 or Virtua Fighter 3, some felt it was maybe a bit shallow.
Oh.
Well, that focus on movement and simple attacks could apparently lead to some less than thrilling strategies, like running away and spamming projectiles. Some players felt you could turtle play super defensively pretty effectively. So, yeah, ambitious system, maybe not perfectly tuned for a high-level competitive play.
Gotcha. Okay, so that's the core fighting game. But the PlayStation version had this massive other thing bolted onto it. Brand new quest, the Forsaken Dungeon. This wasn't just some tiny add-on.
Oh, absolutely not. This was huge. It took the little RPG modes they experimented with in the Tobal games and just blew them up. You picked one of 2 characters, Koji Masuda or Claire Andrews, and dove into this randomly generated dungeon floor after floor after floor.
And the gameplay totally switched gears.
Completely. It became a hack-and-slash action RPG. Explore the dungeon, bash monsters, collect loot, manage resources. There was even a whole town hub area with NPCs, shops for gear repair, item vendors.
Wow.
The works.
Wow. And it had proper RPG stats and stuff for a fighting game side mode.
Surprisingly deep. Strength, vitality, agility, intelligence, even a spirit stat. And you didn't just level up traditionally, you increased stats by eating different kinds of food you found in the dungeon.
Eating food increased your strength. Okay.
Yeah. Food was super important. You had a hunger meter constantly ticking down, so you had to find food to survive. Eating different things boosted different stats, and eating enough could even increase your maximum stomach capacity, which is certainly a mechanic you don't see every day. Added this whole survival pressure.
Hunger management in my fighting game RPG mode. Okay. And then there was the wine.
Ah, yes. The legendary wine market. This was just bizarre and kind of amazing. In the town hub, there was this little mini game where you could buy and sell different kinds of wine.
Like a stock market for wine.
Pretty much. The prices fluctuated over time. You could literally play the market, buy low, sell high. It had basically nothing to do with fighting monsters in the dungeon, but everyone remembers it. Just this weird, charming quirk.
It's something else. What about gear? Was it just basic swords and shields?
Actually, no, it had some interesting systems there, too. Gear could be protected by different gods, giving them special attributes. And you could even transfer attributes between items, so you could really customize your character's build if you got into it.
Okay, so dungeon crawling, hunger, wine speculation, gear crafting. Sounds like they threw everything in. But quest mode wasn't perfect, Rain.
Yeah.
It had some issues people definitely point out.
It definitely did. A major one, kind of ironic really, was the combat inside the quest mode dungeon. Instead of using the main game's free-roaming fighting engine, they went with this super simple, like, one-button attack system. Mash attack, basically.
Wait, seriously? The main game has this whole unique 3D combat system, and the RPG mode uses one button.
Yeah. It felt like such a missed opportunity, leverage the cool fighting mechanics you already built.
Yeah.
But nope. Button mash.
Huh. Weird. What else?
The save system. Oh boy. Saving your game in quest mode cost money, in-game money you earned in the dungeon.
Pass money to save.
Yep. And the price went up the higher your character's level was.
Wow. Okay, that sounds potentially frustrating.
It could be brutal. Imagine having a great run, getting deep, finding awesome loot, but you're low on cash. You can't afford to save. Then you die. All that progress, gone. It felt really punishing, maybe unnecessarily so.
Yikes. Yeah, that doesn't sound fun. And there was something about the ending, too, wasn't there? Something infamous.
The scripted demise. So you grind through potentially dozens of floors, build up your chosen character, Koji or Claire, reach the final boss, and then the game just automatically kills your main character in a cutscene for plot reasons.
It kills your main character after all that.
Poof. gone. And then you're forced to fight the actual final battle using your secondary character, the one you probably barely touched or leveled up.
Oh, no.
Yeah. People who spent hours min-maxing their main character were, let's just say, not pleased. It felt like a cheap trick, like the developers were just messing with you.
I can definitely see how that would feel like a slap in the face after sinking all that time in. But even with those flaws, the mode itself was undeniably substantial.
Oh, massively so. Randomized dungeons, the survival stuff, the wine economy sim. It was a genuine, full-fledged RPG experience packed onto the disc. And for a lot of players, despite the jank, it was super engaging and memorable. You just didn't get that kind of bonus content in most games back then.
True. Okay, but let's shift gears to maybe the biggest reason people remember Ehrgeiz, the guest stars.
The Final Fantasy VII crew. Cloud, Tifa, Sephiroth, even Vincent, Yuffie, and Zack eventually. Seeing them turn up in a fighting game so soon after FFVII blew up globally, that was huge.
It felt like event gaming back then. Seeing Cloud swing the Buster Sword, Tifa doing her combos, Sephiroth being Sephiroth with Mazamune. In 3D, it was pretty wild. Smart move by Square.
Absolutely killer marketing, pure fan service, but brilliantly timed. It brought so many eyes to the game. But we should probably mention, while having them in the game was amazing, their actual fighting styles weren't entirely original, were they?
Yeah, that's a fair point. They were kind of semi-clones, right?
Yeah.
Shared a lot of moves and animations with the original Ergheiz characters like God Hand or Sasuke.
Exactly. Probably a practical decision, to flesh out the roster quickly using existing assets. So if you jumped in expecting Cloud to play totally uniquely, you might have been a tiny bit let down by the mechanics, even if seeing him was cool.
Still, their star power alone must have sold the game to tons of Final Fantasy fans who maybe wouldn't have touched a Dream Factory fighter otherwise.
Oh, unquestionably. You could even argue that Cloud and Sephiroth were so popular they kind of overshadowed the original Ehrgeiz characters, and maybe even the nuances of the core fighting system for a lot of the audience. People came for Final Fantasy, maybe got hooked by quest mode, but the actual original fighting game part might have gotten a bit lost in the shuffle.
Makes sense. So you've got this unique fighting system, this deep but flawed RPG mode, these huge guest characters.
Yeah.
How did critics react to this whole package back in 98, 99?
It was definitely mixed. The arcade version got okay reviews, seen as interesting, but maybe not quite reaching the heights of Tekken 3 or VF3, which were dominating then.
And the PlayStation version with all the extra stuff.
That generally fared better, mostly because of quest mode and the FFVI characters boosting the perceived value. Reviewers usually acknowledged the ambition, the unique movement, the sheer amount of content in quest mode. They often praised the graphics and sound, too. Hearing those FFVI musical cues was a big nostalgia hit even then.
But the core fighting was still the sticking point for some.
That seems to be the recurring theme. Critiques often mention the fighting mechanics felt less refined or deep compared to the top-tier fighters. Words like unique or interesting popped up a lot, but maybe not masterclass in terms of competitive balance or feel. It got compared to other unique fighters like Bushido Blade and obviously Tobal.
So ambitious, maybe a bit rough, but definitely noticeable. How's it viewed now? What's its legacy?
Ehrgeiz holds this weird, specific spot today, doesn't it? It's got a definite cult following, heavily driven by nostalgia and, of course, that FFVII connection. For a whole generation of PlayStation owners, it's just, oh yeah, that fighting game that had Cloud in it.
In quest mode seems like a big part of why people who really got into it still remember it fondly, despite the save system and the ending shenanigans.
Totally. The scale of it, the weird mechanics like hunger and the wine market, it made it memorable, even if flawed. The free-roaming fighting, too, while maybe not perfectly executed, was different. People often call it weird and oddity, maybe an underappreciated gem. It's seen as this quirky PS1 title that offered a ton of surprising content, especially if you dove into that quest mode.
So looking back, Ehrgeiz really feels like a product of its time, a bold experiment when maybe developers felt freer to just try stuff, mash genres together, throw in huge guest stars in unexpected ways. It was pretty unconventional.
Absolutely. That blend of the unique fighting style, the sprawling quest mode, and the sheer star power of the FFVII cast created something distinct. Maybe the fighting wasn't legendary, maybe quest mode had issues, but it carved out its own identity. It's a cool example of developers pushing boundaries and publishers getting creative with their big names.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? About how games are made now versus then. You look at Ehrgeiz, super ambitious, maybe a bit unpolished, relying heavily on guest characters for buzz. How does that whole approach resonate today? Was it like a flawed masterpiece trying to blend genres before its time? Or was it more of an important stepping stone showing how crossovers and genre mashing could work? Warts and all.
It definitely gives you stuff to chew on regarding game design, marketing, and what players expect now compared to back then. A really interesting case study.
For sure. Well, that's all the time we have for this look back at Ergheiz. Thanks for joining us on Psycast. And remember to check out Psyguy's channel for more episodes, streams, and all that good stuff. Subscribe if you haven't.
Yeah, thanks for listening. And remember, you're awesome. Never let the world tell you otherwise. Stay safe. Stay sane.